Hello, everybody, and welcome to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown, which we rate, rank, and review any artist discography, musical topics, songs, what have you, whatever seems interesting. This episode is going to be the first part in the should be five-part, Ringo, sort of series I'm going to be doing through this month, where I'm going to be tackling the solo discographies of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and as well going to be capping the month off with the Beatles. Starting out this one with the shortest batch of all of these, because we aren't including the experimental records, which I do want to listen to at some point, but no thank you for now. And as well, we aren't counting rock and roll because cover record, blah. And of course, that means that we're going to be tackling John Lennon. Now, I have a knack for inviting people onto the show that maybe don't have the greatest of history with certain artists. I did this with Vanessa before, in which I asked her to do Fiona Apple, in which she isn't the biggest Fiona Apple fan. This might be a little bit bigger into that, as Zach above me has mentioned in the past, maybe not being the biggest fan of Lennon's solo. However, I'm a pretty big fan of this catalog. I'll let the cat out of the bag. I like all 7 of these records. It's going to be a pretty positive experience from me, although I do get it. I get why maybe John wouldn't be for everybody.
Well, let me just say first that I think, like most people, I adore John Lennon and the Beatles. In fact, I would say, yeah, maybe not you, but
Fine.
I would say in the Beatles. I go back and forth a lot, but I think John is my favorite Beatle. I think his songs, Norwegian Wood and Happiness is a One Gun. Everybody knows these songs, but love these songs. Among the greatest things ever written in music history. And I sort of tried the first 2 John Lennon albums, and I don't know what exactly was, but it just didn't connect at the time, so I kind of shelved it. Then I heard, much later on, I heard a few other songs that made me interested in revisiting this. So that's what I'm here today to talk about, how that went. And that's just sort of the background. I cat out of the bag. I definitely like John and the Beatles more than the solo stuff, but I can't quite dismiss the solo stuff, I think. So
I mean, you can. It's all good. I dismissed 3/4 of the Beatles music, so it's fine. With that being said, though, I'm going to kick this off. Like I said, I like all of these records. Going into this, I knew classic Ono Band very well. And I'd heard Imagine once before, but past that, it was pretty new to me, if I'm being honest. Although I liked one of those records a lot, and we'll talk about that much later. At the bottom for me, however, I'm going to have Milk and Honey. It's pretty tight for the last place slot for me, because I have 2 records that are below 4 stars, and I like them both a lot, but I do put Milk and Honey at the bottom, mainly due to the production. I don't care much for the sound of the record. It's got some really dated 80s sounding drums, plus some really bad synth moments on it. Past the production, I do think that it's continuing off of what they were doing on Double Fantasy, just with the weaker set of tracks overall. My favorites, though, would be I'm Stepping Out, Don't Be Scared, Borrowed Time, and Grow Old With Me. Overall, it's good, but in my opinion, a bit pointless due to Double Fantasy existing. 3.5 stars, though. It's good.
Yep, that is also my bottom, Milk and Honey. I have it at 3 stars, which is, fair starting place here. This is after Double Fantasy. It's kind of the same thing, which is interesting to me because Lennon passed away. So you might have thought, oh, maybe Ono is going to do some kind of grief expression here. Nope, she just wanted to make the same album that would have been made if he was alive. So that's an interesting artistic choice. I feel like it just doesn't work quite as well as Double Fantasy. I thought the concept on that one was very cool. Here, it just feels a little bit more like some of the songs are unfinished. Ono's songs on the first side are very short and just kind of go right in and out, and I barely notice they're there. And a lot of John songs I'm not huge about either. I'm Stepping Out, it just sounds kind of cheesy to me. Borrowed Time, it's got a nice melody, but it's just very like, I don't know, cutesy reggae. Um, the one I like a lot, one of my favorites in the whole catalog actually, is Nobody Told Me. Love that song. I think it has a little bit of like Instant Karma in it, the single, and the lyrics are possibly part of my favorite part of it. Kind of Dylan-like lyrics, kind of stating all these like contrary things, but very catchy melody, and just fun, lifts your spirits up. I think it's a great song, but that song just kind of eclipses everything else in the album for me. So yeah, that's about all I have to say on that one. 3 stars.
Okay, fair enough. I wasn't sure how much we were going to agree there, so interesting that we're getting something right off the bat.
There might be more than you think, but we shall see.
It'd be really funny if this whole time we were thinking we were going to have these massive disagreements and our whole list is just identical. Alrighty, I'm not necessarily sure. This is the record where I'm most unsure of where it's going to place for you. Number 6 for me, I have Sometime in New York City. And important to note, I don't know if you did, I was just sort of reviewing the studio half, as it's kind of awkward to review the live half and the studio half. If I include the live half, it'd be at the bottom, though. I don't hate it. I get what they're going for. I like that sort of avant-garde experimental music, but I just don't think that's a very good version of that. But yeah, with that being said, I don't really get why people hate this record as much as they do. I do quite enjoy it, and I really love when John and Yoko work well with each other, which maybe not being shown given my bottom 2, but it is what it is. But with that being said, I feels like it's their most unified project together, and it just wouldn't work as well if, for example, they put all the Yoko sides on the first half and all the John songs on the second half. I think I do end up slightly preferring Yoko's contributions, however. Sister Oh Sister and Born in the Prison were some of my favorites. The title track is very good. Oh wait, no, I didn't mean the title track. I meant yeah, that
New York.
one. Yeah, despite not being very PC, to put it lightly, it's a very good song. And I think when they collaborate with each other on songs like Sunday Blaze Sunday and Angela, it's great. I do think that there are a couple of missteps, though. New York City just sucks, and The Luck of the Irish isn't all that much better. And I kind of want to point it out because this is an issue I have with kind of all the Beatles, but especially John in the solo catalog. I don't like when they do the blues. Like, I get what they're going for, and they're heavily influenced by it, but they just aren't good at it most of the time. It just comes across somewhat inauthentic and kind of vain to me. Like, it's just not that great, I feel. I think this is a flawed record, but there's plenty of highs on it. I have it at a pretty high 3.5 stars, and the same will go for my next record. So I like that one quite a bit. Let's hear you talk about probably something that I love now.
Yeah, I think that may be the case, although I'm not sure it's the one that you may have initially predicted I'd put here. Here we go. My number 6, Walls and Bridges.
I'm not gonna lie, I like 100% thought that was gonna be your number 1. Like I thought that record was gonna play to you very well.
Right?
So that's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So this album, what do I say about this album? I have tried it a few times now, and I just struggle with this album. And I don't really know why. There's a few things that it has going for it. It's very lush. It's good use of, the studio. I think that for the time period John was in, I think he's plenty reflective and tries to get that across in his songs. But there's just not that many songs that really make me want to listen to this album. It starts with Going Down on Love, which is cool. I like that song. And then comes the first single here, Whatever Gets You Through the Night. And it's like this was a song made based on like listening to like late night comedy theme songs or something like that. And I can just kind of tell, and it just sounds kind of awkward to me. I know that why people think it's catchy, but it's not for me. Old Dirt Road with Harry Nilsson seems like that would be a knockout. I've listened to it like 10 times. I can't remember how it goes. Bless You, it's kind of long. Everything is it feels very soppy. it just feels like an album that people that don't like the 70s might point to and say, this is why I don't like the 70s. It's just so kind of enamored with itself. And yeah, and then number 9, Dream, it kind of starts all right. But then that chorus, it just doesn't work for me. I get that for some people, probably they like that kind of thing, but for me, it just is like, I don't know about this very much at all. The one song I think is pretty good is like right at the very end. It's that Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out. That feels a little bit like Elton Johnny or something like that. And it's kind of magisterial, but it just takes a very long time to get there. And yeah, just for whatever reason, this album doesn't speak to me. So, and I don't think it's terrible. So I have it at 3 stars as well.
Yeah, I won't lie. From the very first second that I tossed the idea of doing it to you, I was like, I was convinced that would be your number one. Like, on all, it feels like tailor-made to where it'd be something that you would dig at least. Or maybe I'm being silly, but it just feels like a record that you would like more than you do, seemingly. So,
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people that like the music that I do that gravitate towards this kind of stuff, like
yep.
Joe. But
Mhm.
um, for me, yeah, I don't know. The other ones speak to me more.
Absolutely. I like that you brought up Elton John because it's very much like his Elton John record, almost like early Tom Waits in a way. Really cool. All right. Next up, another one I'm not sure where you're going to go for it, but I feel like it'll be soon given your last one. I have Mind Games. Another really solid record to me. Overall, I think it's a pretty good crop of songs, although, like my previous few, there is a couple of duds, the main one being Tight As and Meat City. I just don't like the 50s homage bluesiness that he does. It just doesn't work for me. Despite that, I think that there are a couple of high highs. The title track is amazing. One Day is very good, and the same as Out the Blue. Overall, it's just another strong record that has a couple of flaws in it. Notable, this was, I believe it's the only record that he actually put out where he wasn't with Yoko at the time in his solo career, and you can kind of feel it at points. Overall, though, 3.5 stars. It's good, but just not one of his best for me.
Very interesting. Not going to talk about that one yet. My number 5 is one you have talked about, which is Sometime in New York City. And so first of all, yeah, if we were including the live stuff, this would probably be at the bottom just because that half is just, yeah, it's not very good. It's very long, very just avant-garde, collegey stuff, and even the second part of it, where the Mothers of Invention join, even that part is not that great. But the first half is very interesting. It's still, if somebody said the first half is also not that great, the studio side, I would say you're probably right. But there's some redeeming features about this album. So first of all, I really like that it is an album that's focused on social issues. You just don't see that very much, and this one is very connected to a time period that was very fraught with a lot of social activism and stuff like that. And I definitely feel like that comes across in this album. That said, there are definitely a few things that feel very, very tone deaf. One of them being, of course, the first track. And I know that it was a different time back then, but I still feel like if John had a few more black friends, that probably would not have happened. And it's kind of awkward, but that track, the backing track of it, and whole album long, this Elephant's Memory Band, they just sound amazing. I think they are super cool. The saxophone player is great, especially on Born in a Prison. It's just such a jam. But yeah, the other song that I wanted to kind of mention was Tone Deaf. You already mentioned The Luck of the Irish. Just the lyrics on that are just really awful. But I think there's just plenty of good songs here. Attica State, got a lot of energy. Born in the Prison is a cool set of lyrics, and I think Ono I think of the 3 albums they did together, I feel like this is the one where Lennon and Ono are on the most similar artistic plane, and they're actually working off of each other pretty well here, which is I was kind of surprised by. And then I think songs like John Sinclair and Angela are good too. Sunday Bloody Sunday, a bit over the top. So I don't think that every song on here works, but there's just a few that just I feel like fit what they were trying to do, and I think the concept was cool. So not a perfect album by any means. I still think I have this one at 3 stars, but slightly higher than the other two. Just I feel like I come back to it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, okay, so we're taking a pretty big leap from Mind Games to my next record, and this is the one that I actually just flipped around with the other record. To clarify, I had that one at a 3.5, and now it's a pretty strong 4 for these next two. I really like most of this catalog, just the ones in the bottom that are a bit hit or miss. I'm actually talking about Walls and Bridges now. Not necessarily to the same level as his initial works. I think Walls and Bridges is a really strong and underappreciated record by him. I've heard some people kind of declare it as a bit of his Elton John record, and it's a very apt comparison. Although this is a record that Elton just simply wouldn't make, in my opinion, just in the nature of Lennon's songcraft as a whole. It's a darker and a bit more out there compared to something Elton would do, especially in this era of Elton's career. But it still has plenty of hooks and melodies to latch onto compared to something like classic Ono Band. Despite that, I don't think that this record necessarily has a great song, if that makes sense. I think that it has a bunch of really good, really strong material. My favorite song probably being Scared, but I just simply don't think that it has that one highlight to really push it over the edge. It's a cool intersection between the collaborative records he was doing earlier on with Yoko and the Lost Era record Mind Games. Like I said earlier, it's a high 4 stars. It's a very strong record, but I think it's just missing that like real knockout track that all of his other records have to really push it up there for me. But still really, really like it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair review, but it's interesting because I do think that there are people that will really stan Number
Absolutely.
9 Dream, and some even with Whatever Gets You Through the Night. So I don't know.
Like they're good songs. It's just they're not some of his best, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. All right, number 4, I'm going on to Double Fantasy. And so, it seems kind of normal list, right? Not Walls and Bridges. So, yeah, Double Fantasy, I'm going up to 4 stars here. It's a big leap. And yeah, I was really surprised by this album. I thought the whole concept of it is very interesting. At first, I definitely gravitated more towards John's songs, feeling like with Yoko's songs, they were a little bit out there. I don't know if I loved her voice, but a lot of them kind of grew for me as time went on. I think Kiss, Kiss, Kiss is just kind of so weird and kind of catchy that it kind of works. Yes, I'm Your Angel. She kind of sings in that more like 1930s traditional pop or jazzy style. And I actually kind of think that fits her voice well because it's very light. And then Every Man Has a Woman Who Loves Her. Every Man Has a Woman Who Loves Him is really catchy. So I think that's a good song. I don't know if all of them are great. Beautiful Boys, plural, has like Star Wars noises in the background, and I don't know quite how I feel about that. I know what she was going for, trying to make it seem like, oh, men have this like, geeky side behind them or something like that, but I don't know if it quite works. John's songs, they just feel so fresh and very catchy, more accessible, so maybe a little less searching than some of his other material. But I think Just Like Starting Over is a great shot of energy to kick it off. I'm Losing You is a very cool instrumental jam. And I think his vocals are really kind of tortured on that. I think that's the one song where you really feel like, oh, that's John. Like, I think it's definitely one of the better ones on the album. Beautiful Boy, singular, is it's also kind of reggae-y, like Borrowed Time, but I just think it's a little bit more touching. Watching the Wheels kind of has a nice, relaxed pace to it. It's kind of just a pleasant song to have on. And then I love Dear Yoko. I think it's just full of pep and energy, and I can really just tell he means what he's saying, that he's just so excited to be with her. And I can see it's definitely very commercial, but it's just really catchy. So overall, I think they again, unlike Sometime in New York, I don't think they were quite on the same artistic page here. So, going back and forth, I'm not sure it's like the best thing, but I think the concept was cool. where they say, okay, we're just going to both make this album, and kind of each song will be kind of talking about the same thing, but whatever we're writing to it. So I like that concept. I think it works pretty well. I don't know if this is my favorite album or anything, but I think it's good. So 4 stars.
Nice. I'm going to continue talking about it. Double Fantasy, my number 3. Another pretty strong 4 stars for me. Another one is collaboration records with Yoko, and to me, it's very strong. I think it's a lot more fun than some of the music John was making before at this point. Seems a bit inspired by the new wave scene that had been blossoming. Notably, I believe he was a really big fan of the B-52s, so wish he had better taste around that time, but it is what it is. It's just cool to see Lennon experimenting a bit within a pop landscape. And I think that I like Yoko Ono a lot. I know that she's divisive, but I really feel like she works as a great counterbalance to John across all of the records that she's on. She has a very cool, weirder element to the record that it just wouldn't have had without her. And I feel like it's that almost slight dichotomy between the two because, well, John's stuff is never, the most outward, the most poppy. It's definitely far more, it's far more structured, far more standard than your standard Yoko song. And I like the way that they sort of blend into each other. Something I need to listen to, but I haven't gotten around to, is there's a stripped down version of this record that I think could be really interesting to see how those songs play together in that circumstance. But I'll get to it eventually. My favorite cuts here would be Cleanup Time, Watching the Wheels, Dear Yoko, and Hard Times Are Lovers. As I said before, another very strong 4-star record. I think it's incredibly strong. Just nothing was going to top his first 2 for me. Those are just masterpieces. So
I see. All right, we're on the same page with that one. This one you may not expect to be coming next, but my number 3 is Imagine. So, and this is just where I get into the Zach feels so tortured here part of his discography, because this is just an album where I feel like there's just some really great stuff, and there's just some stuff I just don't care that much about. And this and Plastic Ono Band have just been written about to death in so many like critics, reviews and stuff has been really praised. And I don't know if I hear it as a whole. So, I do hear it for the opener, Imagine. I think it's a great song. I think it's a great Phil Spector production. I think it's just really beautiful. I understand why it's such a big song. I think it's also a great opener. So it's off to a really good start. I think, with a song like Imagine, they already have something that's a little bit more polished than anything on Plastic Ono Band. So, I think when I kind of first was sitting around to this, I sort of heard this and said, oh, okay, this is going to be great. And then you immediately get Crippled Inside, which is just, it feels like not the track you want to be after Imagine. It's fine. It's kind of I don't know. I understand it's taking like your own personal depression or whatever and making it kind of fun. And like, I get that, but it's so slight. And then you get Jealous Guy, which is a nice track. I think Roxy Music does it better, but it's still a good one, a strong one. Then you get these 2 bluesier numbers. The first of which just kind of feels very tossed off, in my opinion, with It's So Hard. And then I Don't Want to Be a Soldier is 6 minutes long and kind of repetitive, but I think if you're in the right mood, it kind of works. Then we move on to Give Me Some Truth, which I think that's pretty hard, bawling, and it's kind of the angry Lennon, and I think he does that pretty well. Moving into Oh My Love, which is a really pretty song, actually. I think it's short and sweet, nice. And then there's the big one that How Do You Sleep? I don't like this song very much. It gets so much praise. It's kind of a diss track, and people are just going on and on about how it's like such a rebuke to Paul, and I don't know if it just sounds that tough to me. It's so melodic that I don't know if I quite. It even has like the big strings that almost like proto disco-y or something like that, and it just doesn't quite work for me. I understand that it's people like gossip and stuff, and so but like I'm just listening to this song from a musical side, and I don't know, just it's not for me. How feels very a little self-absorbed. It's fine. I probably shouldn't be saying stuff like that, but just kind of how it comes across. Oh Yoko, I don't like it as much as Dear Yoko. It's kind of fun, but I don't love the I love to turn you on chorus. I don't know if that quite works, and it goes on for a while. So yeah, it's just another one where I feel like some of it is just really magical. I think title track, Give Me Some True Magic, even Oh My Love, I think is really pretty. Jealous Guy. There's just some stuff that pulls me out of him just writing songs for songs, where I feel like it's just a little bit more like he's in this big spotlight of the post Beatles world, and I do feel like that detracts a little bit. So that's just kind of where I am on his solo discography in general, to some extent. I think he was constantly trying to write, and in many times being successful at continuing to write really good, interesting stuff that was reflective of him. And but I just think that there's some times where people got a little crazy just because he used to be a Beatle and everything was so important that he put out. So
Interesting. What was your star rating for that one? 4, I'm guessing.
That's also 4. Yep.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. Setting yourself up for a mind games win. Interesting. Alrighty. Let's keep talking about it. Number 2, Imagine. While not at the same level of his debut, Imagine sees Lennon less focused on himself and his personal struggles, and it's kind of more of a pop record. While still having much more of the darker lyrical content that was on Plastic Ono Band, it's just sort of packaged in a far more accessible and easy to listen. Probably the best example of that is the dichotomy within the title track, which is a beautiful piano ballad with Lennon, maybe it's just me, but kind of grimly speaking about, imagining this perfect world that more than likely isn't happening. Maybe that's me sort of putting some double meaning into it. I do the same thing with like Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys, where I kind of get a bunch of melancholy from that song, but it is what it is. But anyways, I love Crippled Guy. I think it's really good. Um, I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama, I also think is great. I don't like his bluesy stuff that much, but I think that song works really well. Same with Give Me Some Truth. I think Oh My Love is great. And I love how I love when Lennon is like this really self-absorbed, like kind of pretentious, arrogant ass. Because more often than not, he's right and he's interesting, so I'm cool with it. So that's kind of how I interpret that. But my favorite song here is definitely Oh Yoko, his most Beatles sounding song up to that point since the solo work started. And it's just a beautiful love letter to Yoko Ono as a whole. And I figure I'll touch on it because I didn't even write anything in my notes. I mean, How Do You Sleep? It's good. It's really good. But I mean, it's really one of the best on the record. And if we're comparing the diss songs that they did to each other, Too Many People blows this song out of the water. Like the one time I'll ever say Paul did something better than John. But anyways, it's not necessarily as impactful or arguably as important as Plastic Ono Band was, but it really did just showcase that Lennon on his own was able to make another great record that doesn't necessarily need to be this whole dark experimental opus, as this is just a great pop record. 4.5 stars for Imagine. But number 1 is I love Plastic Ono Band so much.
Well, that's the one I'm going to be talking about. You did predict that. So my number 2 is Plastic Ono Band. So that means you know what number 1 is. And I don't try to make too big of a deal out of it because I don't know if it means that much. But Plastic Ono Band is an album I've struggled with quite a bit. This was ranked at number 23 in Rolling Stone's like original top 500 of all time list, and so I was expecting a lot. And the album starts with like him and a piano, and he just is screaming in a completely unmusical way. And I'm just thinking to myself, what the heck happened here? What are people hearing in this? And yeah, that was not a good start for me. Now, I will say on this most recent re-listening, I listened to that track again, and I think for what I just said, which I still think is true, it is probably like the best produced song I've ever heard in my life. Like just the way everything sounds is so beautiful. And I think it was probably Spectre that did that. So it's just him making these like weird guttural noises that I just feel like I understand he's trying to really tap into himself and like pull something out, but it's just too much. And um, so it doesn't totally work for me, but I will give that there are parts of it that sound really pretty. Hold On is another track that bothers me. It's just a short song, but in the middle of it, he's just like cookie. Like, where does that come from? I just don't understand. Um, so it takes a while for me to get to songs that I really even enjoy on this album, but we do get there, and when we get there, it hits. Working Class Hero. It's just not that different than like early Dylan, but something about the way he does and composes the lyrics is really strong. It really hits you, and I think it's really beautiful. And then we get Isolation, which is both amazing music and lyrics. That one I feel like could have fit easily on the White Album, and I wouldn't have blinked at all. I think it's gorgeous, really powerful. I love the part in the middle where it gets more intense. Definitely one of my favorite songs of his. Then we get Remember, which is another one where I'm just kind of like, okay, I like it, but it's like there's critics out there just saying, oh, the end where it blows up is like him blowing. Like, to me, I just think, okay, it's just he just ended the song abruptly. Like, I don't see that much into it. And then the one that really irks me a little bit is God, because this is just a song where I feel like it's everybody just wants to put so much into it and take so much out of it, and all he's really doing is just doing this really long list of like important figures, and it's kind of boring. And then he says, and I don't believe in Beatles, and it drops out, and it's like, oh, so dramatic. It just doesn't quite work for me. Like I feel like people are making too big of a deal just because of his history and are not really listening to the song. But again, I have this at number 2. So there's a lot, there's the 2 songs I already mentioned, but Love, I think, is really pretty, really sweet. I think that one grew on me a lot. Well is kind of a garage rocker that reminds me a lot of what the White Stripes would kind of do later. I do think he kind of goes a little overboard with the screaming on it, but it's still good. Look at Me is short, but it's nice. And then even like God, I know I'm complaining about it a lot, but there are some nice moments in it, especially the beginning, I think is pretty. So, this is just an album that I'm very frustrated with, but I can't dismiss it as like a terrible album. I think it's a good solo album. That's where I would put it. I think it's good. I just I don't hear an album that should be considered one of the greatest albums of all time. I don't hear something that is just perfect. I don't think the therapy thing is that interesting to me. I do think that there are some good songs on here. That's where I have it. 4 stars, Plastic Ono Band.
Well, anyways, time to talk about one of the greatest albums, probably the greatest solo album of all time. My number 22
All
album,
Things Must Pass is the greatest solo album.
No, that's next week. But that is my number 2. But we're talking about my number 1 now. A little bit of a spoiler. This is by far my favorite record made by any Beatle in the band or otherwise. Plastic Ono Band. This record, I get what you're saying, and I think a lot of it just comes down to how much you're able to buy into what Lennon is giving to you. And I am taking full spoonfuls of his medication because I just think that this record is absolutely brilliant. I just think that this is a collection. This is very much a collection of songs where John just rants, he rambles for a lot of it, and I am just loving every second of it. Just the way he's spilling himself out across the record to me is just absolutely mesmerizing. Mother blows me away every time. Same with Working Class Hero. I know that you hate it, and I understand why people would, but I think God is amazing. The song, anyways. Despite those being the highs, I still think the tracks like Isolation, Remember, and Well help to fill out the record perfectly. Really, to me, just every song here is a perfect segue into the other one, and it just plays brilliantly as a journey through Lennon's mind at the time. the drumming and guitars are a lot of what helped suck me into it. While this record is very sparse and very, minimalist at points, I feel like just the playing across all the songs are just so sublime, just so excellent for me, track to track. And just the production on this, I think despite it being, you know, not necessarily as arranged or as big as something like Imagine or Walls and Bridges, or hell, even like Ram that came out somewhere later. I think that this one sounds the best. I just think that everything is just perfection on it to me. I think track for track, it just excels at pretty much everything. I don't have anything bad to say because everything that you dislike about the record is what lends me to like it more and more because I'm just sipping everything Lennon's telling me. Because for once, and this is something that happens on a lot of these records, a lot of Beatles solo, I feel like they aren't hindered by the success that they had in that band. I feel like to a certain degree, they always felt the need that they needed to ramp up to like do better than their previous work in certain Beatles records. Well, I feel like in the solo career, they're able just to truly be themselves more. I feel like you get that on something like Ram, you get that on Classic Ono Band, you get that on something like Living in the Material World. Yeah, that's the name of the record. Maybe messed that up. Oh well. I just feel like you personally get a closer interpretation of the musicians themselves across these records, and that's personally why I like them so much. I think the Plastic Ono Band is mesmerizing. I think that's brilliant. I think that's pretentious. I think that it's annoying. And I love every second of it. 5 stars. Absolutely tremendous.
Well, I think that they worked for the best together, and that's why the Beatles have lasted as long as they have. But that's just me.
Not even.
Yeah, so my last one, number one for me, number one John Lennon solo, Mind Games. 4 stars. It's not anything, that's blown me away or anything like that, but I do like it a lot. I found more songs on this album that I think I really genuinely like than any of the other albums. I think that's the reason why it's a number one. There's a few things I'll admit. I don't think the production is quite as strong as the Spector produced ones, Plastic Ono Band and Imagine. I admit that. And there's definitely some duds, especially up top. Tight Ass, just not a good song. Like, I'm just gonna straight out say that. That one's not good. But there's a lot of great songs on here. The opener is really beautiful. It kind of almost reminds me of like a Flaming Lips track. Really, it's a little repetitive, but you just kind of get lost in it, and there's just a lot of it's very touching. And then I think there's a few other ones that I think are okay up front, but I think it really gets started around Brain on the Lucy, Free to People. That one is just, it kind of has a little bit of that like social concern on Sometime in New York, but it's just a little bit more polished, and just another one that even though it's got a political message, it's just very catchy, very easy to kind of just almost relax to it and just kind of groove with his sentiments. And I get that feeling as well on Intuition. It's really relaxed. It almost feels like you can almost hear the cat scurrying across the room, and it's kind of playful atmosphere. It's nothing that's trying too hard. It's melodic, it's pretty, it's catchy, but it still has plenty of ideas in it. And I think a lot of the songs on this album have that. There are a few that are a little bit more polished, specifically Out of the Blue, which is really, really well done, built up really beautifully, great use of build, great use of backing vocals. It feels very Beatlesque, and that might be why I like it so much, but definitely a big highlight here. Really touching song. I think at this time he was breaking up with Yoko, but I think this is possibly his best love song to Yoko. And then Only People is another one that I just feel like, only people know just how to talk to people. It has just a little bit of that, like, we're kind of, socially, concerned, and we're gonna engage our community or something along those lines. but it's just done in kind of a relaxed, catchy way that I think is just kind of addicting. And then I know has a beautiful kind of acoustic part. It's a pretty song. I don't think that some of these songs are like the best ever songs, and I know is a good example of that. I think it's very good, but I can definitely imagine maybe a better song. But yes, such as Imagine, but it's very good. You Are Here is pretty, and then Meat City, I know, it's kind of in that same vein as Tyus, but I think it's a lot better. I think it's a lot more muscular. So that it takes a little bit of time to build, which is why I don't have this album higher. But I think at a certain point, I think the songs are really strong, and I'm really enjoying this album. So, I'm glad that I found another Lennon album that I think is at least as strong as the other two, and I think personally a hair stronger. I think I'll go back to this one a little bit, probably the most of them all, which is why I have it at the top. Mind Games.
Yeah, you are certainly playing some mind games with that choice, but it is what it is. No, I mean, it's a good record. I get what you're saying. It's interesting.
I like how it feels more natural to me. It just feels more just like the kind of music that just is speaking by itself without these big concepts and ideas kind of getting muddled in the way. It's just the one that I just feel like is the most easy to approach and enjoyable.
Totally fair. That's kind of why I thought you were going to go to Walls and Bridges. I thought that was like his most, sort of.
It's just down. That one just feels more like sluggish and drowned out for some reason. But
fair enough. I can't fault you too much. I like all of these records, and even though I may be in slightly higher on one record, just in general, I mean, it is what it is. You still like this far better than I expected you to.
And but I just find it so frustrating that I can't get beyond, because I'm me, I don't struggle to get beyond 4 stars. There's a lot of artists I'm willing to go 4.5 or 5 on, and just
so some of your
John is not one that John is just not one that quite gets there. I think he always has a few tracks in there that I'm just kind of like, that really shouldn't be on the album. And
I'd probably agree. Even though there are records that I really like, obviously ones I love, I mean, there are very blatant highlights and lesser moments on those records, even the ones that I think are really excellent. And it is what it is. At the end of the day, though, he's still a better writer than McCartney, so I'm cool with that. With that being said, though, that was Lennon. I obviously quite liked him a lot. Zach, he was here. He existed for a little bit. Yeah,
it's tough to order these. I really had to think long and hard about the top 4. They're just all so close to me. But
that's kind of what I was figuring. We almost agreed, which would have been the first time that we've done that in like 3 episodes or so. I forget how many was done at this point. And I gotta ask because I'm genuinely curious now. Do you like Mind Games more or less than Being Funny in a Foreign Language?
Oh, I think Mind Games is a little stronger than that one. Yeah. Being Funny is probably, it's probably more around where Imagine is. Around that 4-star level.
Yes, fair enough. For what it's worth, I like Being Funny in a Foreign Language probably a little less than Walls and Bridges, but still like that record a lot. With that being said, only reason I'm comparing is because of Zach's love of 1975. I don't think that these are
very different artists.
Really? No. But yeah, after this, going to be moving into the 10 records of George Harrison. I bet you can guess what the number 1 is. It's really up in the air. I'm going to be bringing back the Phil Collins duo of Cammy and Toby for that episode. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Fun fact, I've actually recorded all of the other Beatles Month episodes before this one. So that's kind of funny.
Oh, it's a good effort you've made.
Yeah, you should see my folder of just recorded episodes. With that being said, this was Lennon. I really hope that you enjoyed. Hope that you look forward to Harrison, hopefully coming out next week. In the description down below, there's going to be a link to the Discord server in which you can sort of talk with other people about the channel. You're going to get full updates for the extended schedule, as well. There's going to be a couple of polls coming up, hopefully soon, for artists that I'm going to do in the month of May. And try and start doing like 1 a month. We'll see how that goes, because I got to think of multiple artists I actually want to do for those. So, alrighty. Really hope that you enjoyed and hope that you check out more stuff of me. Thank you. Buttons are